You think mermaids are beautiful, romantic creatures of the sea. You are completely wrong, and the truth is far more terrifying than any nightmare you have ever had. A woman beautiful and terrible, whose lower half belongs to the cold and crushing depths. We call them mermaids, but the legends we tell our children are sanitized lies, designed to keep us from looking too closely at the waves. The true history of the sea folk is not one of romance, but of divine deformity and existential dread. It begins not in the blue waters of the Mediterranean, but in the dust and blood of ancient Assyria. 3,000 years ago, a goddess walked among men. Her name was Atargatis. She was a creature of light and fertility, but she fell in love with a mortal shepherd. This was her first mistake. To love a human is to invite the rot of time into an immortal heart. In a moment of unintended power, she accidentally killed him. The weight of her grief was a physical thing. It was a stone that pulled her toward the edge of a great lake. She did not want to die, but she could not bear to remain as she was. Atargatis threw herself into the water, hoping to shed her divinity and become a simple fish of the deep. But the water would not allow it. The lake was too shallow for her shame, and the elements refused to hide her beauty. She remained trapped in the middle of a violent transformation. Her upper body stayed human, but her skin began to change. It became like cracked ivory and dry parchment. Her eyes, once bright with celestial fire, turned milky white and began to weep black ink. Below the waist, the agony was total. Her legs fused together as the bone softened into flexible cartilage. Her skin tore open as heavy, hammered lead scales forced their way through her flesh. She became the first hybrid, the divine deformity. Atargatis fled into the salt of the greater oceans, carrying her grief like a plague. She was the progenitor of a lineage that would haunt the shores of every continent. For the mermaid is not a species, but a symptom of our fear of the unknown. Every culture has a name for them, because every culture has a fear of the deep. In the frozen mists of northern Europe, the legend took on a darker and more predatory edge. The rusalka of the Slavic woods were once women who died before their time. They were the spirits of the unclean dead who had been pulled into the silt and the sludge. They do not sing to find a lover. They sing to fill their lungs with the same stagnant water that claimed them. Their hair is not silk, but thick, tangled river moss that moves like a cluster of eels. When a sailor looks into the waves, he does not see a maiden. He sees a mirror of his own eventual drowning. The rusalka waits in the shadows of the reeds, with a jaw that unhinges too far. She reveals rows of needle-thin fish teeth designed to grip flesh and never let go. Further west, the Selkies of the Celtic Isles tell a story of stolen skins and forced marriages. They are creatures of the gray Atlantic who must shed their sealskins to walk on land. But to lose your skin is to lose your soul. The Selkie is a prisoner of the shore, longing for the cold embrace of the abyss. Even in their human form, their skin remains translucent, showing dark, branch-like veins. They smell of salt and old iron. When they finally return to the sea, they do not go as friends. They go as survivors of a land that tried to break them. Across the world in the distant east, the mermaid takes on a form of biological horror. The Ningyo of Japan is not a woman at all, but a monstrous omen of war and disaster. It is a creature with the face of a human, but the body of a jagged and dangerous beast. The Ningyo does not bring treasure. It brings the flesh of immortality. The legend of Yabikuni tells of a woman who ate the meat of a mermaid. She lived for 800 years, but this was not a gift. It was a slow and agonizing rot. Her mind faded into the fog of centuries, while her body refused to die. She became a living relic of a time that had long since passed. The immortality of the sea is a cold and lonely thing. The ocean is a single sentient organism, and the mermaids are its white blood cells. They are sent to the surface to lure the land dwellers back into the dark. We came from the water millions of years ago. The salt in our blood is a reminder of our true home. The mermaid is the gatekeeper of our subconscious. She is the uncanny valley of the evolutionary line. A creature that looks human enough to trust, but functions like a beast of the trenches. When we look at the horizon, we are looking at the end of our world. The mermaids are waiting there in the crushing pressure where the light never reaches. They are the shadows under the boat. They are the strange sound in the middle of the night on a calm sea. Eventually, the water will demand its children back. The tide is rising. And when it does, the divine progenitor will be there to welcome us. She will weep her black ink tears as we sink into the silt, and we will finally understand why we have always been afraid of the waves. The abyss is not empty. It is full of us, and it is hungry. To move from the ancient sun-scorched plains of Assyria to the iron-gray waters of the north is to move from a myth of grief to a myth of predation. The air here does not carry the scent of incense or cedar, but the sharp and biting stench of salt and stagnant decay. In the Slavic heartlands, the rivers are not merely veins of life, but winding paths for the restless dead. Here, the legend of the mermaid is stripped of its divine ivory and replaced with the translucent pallor of the rusalka. They are the spirits of the unclean dead, young women who were taken by the water before their wedding day, or infants who never felt the touch of a sacred rite. They are not born of goddess blood, but of unresolved tragedy and the crushing weight of the river silt. In the dead of winter, the rivers freeze into a black and unyielding glass, but beneath that glass, the rusalka are awake. They drift in the lightless currents, their bodies moving with a fluid and jointless grace that defies human biology. When the spring thaw comes and the ice begins to groan and crack, they rise toward the surface. They do not look for lovers to cherish. They look for warmth to steal. A rusalka is a creature of the threshold. She exists in the space between the solid earth and the fluid void. Her skin is a map of her own demise. It is translucent and thin as wet parchment, allowing the dark, branch-like veins to pulse visibly beneath the surface. There is no blood in these veins, only the cold and brackish water of the Dnieper or the Danube. Her hair is the first thing a victim sees. It is not the golden silk of a storybook siren. It is a thick and suffocating mass of tangled river moss and slimy seaweed. It moves in the air as if it were still submerged, coiling and reaching like a cluster of eels toward anything that radiates heat. When a man walks along the reed-choked banks at twilight, he hears a sound that mimics laughter. It is a wet and rhythmic clicking, produced by a jaw that has long since lost the need for speech. The rusalka waits until he is close enough to see her eyes. They are the same lidless and milky-white orbs as the progenitor. They reflect nothing. There is no soul behind them, only a hunger that has been preserved by the cold. She beckons him forward with fingers that are long and spindly, like the roots of a drowned willow. If he enters the water, the trap is sprung. The rusalka does not kill with a blade or a bite. She kills with the tickle. It is a frantic and hysterical biological reflex. She wraps her moss hair around his limbs and drags him into the shallows. She begins to touch his ribs and his throat with her cold and needle-thin fingers. He begins to laugh as the air leaves his lungs, but the laughter turns into a ragged gasp. He inhales the stagnant river mud and the freezing water. He watches her face through the darkening water as his vision fades. He sees her jaw unhinge past the point of no return. He sees the rows of needle-thin fish teeth, and in that moment, he understands that he is not being loved. He is being integrated into the silent choir of the river. Further west, where the cliffs of the Celtic Isles meet the iron-fisted Atlantic, the terror takes a different shape. The Selkie is a myth of stolen identity and environmental displacement. To the people of the Orkneys and the Hebrides, the sea is a neighbor that is always trying to move into your home. The Selkies are creatures of the gray Atlantic who wear the skins of seals to navigate the crushing pressures of the deep. They are the most human-like of all the legends, but that only makes their horror more intimate. On certain nights of the full moon, they swim to the shore and shed their skins. The skin of a Selkie is not a garment. It is their soul. It is a thick and heavy membrane of dark fur and hammered lead scales. When they step out of it, they are vulnerable and pale. They dance on the sand, their translucent skin glowing under the moon, showing the branch-like veins of their lineage. But if a man finds that skin and hides it, the Selkie is enslaved. This is the marriage of the drowned. A man takes a Selkie wife not through love, but through the theft of her true nature. She lives among us for years. She bears children whose skin is always a little too pale and whose eyes are always a little too wide. She smells of salt and old iron. She looks at the ocean with a longing that is a physical sickness. The land is a desert to her. The gravity of the earth feels like a crushing weight on her delicate cartilage. Every breath of dry air is a scratch against the back of her throat. She is a prisoner in a house of stone and wood. Her husband believes he has tamed the sea, but the sea is only waiting for its tide to return. One day, she finds the skin hidden in a trunk or buried beneath the floorboards. She does not hesitate. She does not say goodbye to her human life. She drags the heavy and rotting skin back to the water. She pulls it over her human frame, feeling the familiar agony as her bones fuse and her legs melt into a single leaden tail. She returns to the abyss, not as a wife, but as a survivor of a land that tried to break her. The children she leaves behind are forever marked. They carry the salt in their blood and the darkness in their eyes. They will spend their lives walking the shorelines, listening for a voice in the waves. For the ocean does not just take. It leaves behind fragments of itself to ensure we never forget the debt we owe. The rusalka and the selkie represent the two faces of the drowning. One is the sudden and violent theft of breath. The other is the slow and agonizing erosion of the soul. Both lead back to the same cold and lightless trench. Both are reminders that the water is not an element, but a predator. It is a predator that has all the time in the world. It waits for the ice to melt. It waits for the skin to be found. It waits for the lungs to open. The cold embrace of the mermaid is the realization that we are merely visitors on the surface. The depths are our true destination, and the choir is always looking for a new voice. To travel further east is to leave the realm of tragedy and enter the kingdom of omens. In the waters of the Pacific, the mermaid undergoes a final and horrific metamorphosis. We call her the Niño. She does not possess the face of a maiden or the song of a spirit. Her features are a grotesque mockery of the human form, flattened by the crushing pressures of the trenches. Gills are slit deep into her cheeks, pulsing like raw wounds with every breath of salt water. Her eyes are two pits of phosphorescent yellow light that burn through the charcoal darkness of the deep. She is covered in obsidian scales and spiny dorsal fins that can cut through iron. She carries a rusted anchor like a shepherd's crook. She does not lead a flock to safety. She leads the world to war. The Niño is a harbinger of fire and earthquake and blood. To see one is to know that your world is about to end. But the most terrifying part of her legend is not what she does to the world, but what she does to the flesh. In the 8th century, a woman named Yaubikuni partook of a feast she was never meant to taste. Her father, a simple fisherman, had captured a creature of the deep. He did not know what it was. Yaubikuni ate the flesh of the Niño. It was a meat that tasted of ancient salt and bitter iron. It granted her the gift of immortality. She lived for 800 years. She saw dynasties rise and crumble into the dust of history. She outlived her children and her children's children until their names were nothing but stippled ghosts on a page. She watched the forests fall and the cities grow. But immortality in the myth of the East is not a static state. It is a slow and agonizing mutation. Her human skin began to turn into a map of the abyss. It became translucent and vein-streaked, but with a new and jagged texture. The obsidian scales of the creature she had consumed began to erupt from her own joints. The cheek gills began to open behind her ears and pulse with the rhythm of the tides. Her mind faded into a fog of centuries, while her body remained a prisoner of the meat. She became a living relic of a biological crime. She was a human woman being overwritten by the genetic code of a monster. She did not die because the sea would not let her go. She was being pulled back to the water, one scale at a time. This is the Eastern nightmare, the realization that to consume the sea is to be consumed by it. The ocean is a patient architect that builds its monuments out of our suffering. It does not want your worship. It wants your biology. The mermaid is the bait, and we are the catch. And for those who eat the bait, the hook stays in forever. The immortality of the Niño is the ultimate cosmic horror. It is a life without end in a body that is no longer yours. It is a slow descent into the trenches while you are still breathing. The ocean is calling its children back, and some of us have already begun to change. The ocean is not just a place of water and salt. It is a vast and dark mirror of the human mind. Across every continent, separated by thousands of miles of impossible distance, the same image emerges. From the sun-drenched coasts of West Africa to the turquoise waters of the Caribbean, we find the Mamiwata and the Lasirn. They are not cousins of the European mermaid. They are independent manifestations of the same psychic rot. The psychiatrist Carl Jung believed that the deep sea represents the collective unconscious. It is the primal part of our psyche where the logic of the land does not exist. The mermaid is the gatekeeper of this subconscious vault. She stands at the threshold where our humanity ends and our animal nature begin. This is the dark truth of the aquatic archetype. We do not invent her because we see her in the waves. We see her in the waves because she is already inside us. The ocean is the ID, the realm of pure instinct and hidden desires. The mermaid is the personification of that ID. She is beautiful because our desires are beautiful. She is monstrous because our instincts are predatory. Why do we fear things that look human but function like beasts? This is the trap of the uncanny valley. A creature with the face of a mother, but the unblinking eyes of a shark. It is the ultimate evolutionary what if, a path we could have taken millions of years ago, but didn't. In the African legends, the Mamiwata is a spirit of immense beauty and immense danger. She is often depicted with a serpent coiled around her neck. The serpent is a symbol of the knowledge that lives in the dark. Her skin is the color of deep-sea silt, and her eyes are the shared milky white of the lineage. She does not want your gold. She wants your attention. To look at her is to lose your ability to look at anything else. She is the siren call of the deep that bypasses the ears and goes straight to the soul. The Caribbean Lasirn is the queen of the reefs and the mistress of the mirror. She is the sound of the surf, translated into a human voice. She is the reflection you see in a pool of water just before you fall in. She holds a silver comb and a looking glass, but she does not use them for vanity. She uses them to show you the part of yourself you have tried to drown. This is the collective unconscious in its most literal form. The realization that the monsters are not in the water. The monsters are the water. The ocean is a single sentient mind, and we are merely the thoughts it has forgotten on the shore. The mermaid is the memory returned. She reminds us that our skin is thin and our lungs are weak. She reminds us that the land is a temporary sanctuary built on a foundation of sand. Beneath the surface, there is no law and there is no mercy. There is only the crushing pressure of the truth. We have spent centuries mapping the stars and looking for gods in the clouds, but we have barely scratched the surface of the abyss within ourselves. The mermaid is the shadow we cast on the waves. She is the part of us that stayed behind in the dark when the rest of the world stepped into the light. She is the ancestor that refused to crawl onto the mud, and she is still waiting for us to come back. The archetype is a cycle, a loop of salt and blood that connects every human heart to the trenches. Every culture has a mermaid because every culture shares the same shadow. When you look at a mermaid, you are not looking at a myth. You are looking at your own reflection in a window that leads to a room without air, and the reflection is starting to reach back. We believe we have conquered the world because we have mapped its surface. We have laid lines of ink across the globe and given names to the deep, as if a name could contain a god. But the map is a thin membrane of human arrogance stretched over a void that does not recognize our borders. As our technology descends into the lightless trenches, we find that the legends did not disappear with the coming of the light. They simply became more honest. In the crushing pressure where the bone becomes like glass, the mermaid loses her mythic veneer. She is no longer a goddess, or a spirit, or a monster of folklore. She is a biological inevitability. The ocean is not a collection of water and salt. It is a single, sentient organism of planetary scale. It is an ancient and unblinking eye that has been watching us since the moment we first crawled onto the mud. And the mermaids are its white blood cells. They are the fingers of a mind that thinks in centuries and speaks in the language of the tide. They were sent to the surface to monitor the infection of the land. They were the bait that we mistook for beauty. Every culture has a mermaid legend, Because the
mermaid
ocean
myth
wanted to
exists
be
only
remembered.
because the ocean-
It wanted to keep the link between our lands and the salt water alive. Now the cycle is coming to its close. The tide is not just rising because of the heat of the sun. It is rising because the deep is finally ready to reclaim its children. The land is a temporary experiment that is reaching its expiration date. We have spent thousands of years trying to build walls against the water, but the salt in our blood is a traitor. It vibrates with the rhythm of the trenches. It calls back to the progenitor, who still weeps her black ink tears in the dark. One by one, the cities will become reefs. The cathedrals of stone will be overwritten by the architecture of bone and coral. We will shed our dry skin for the hammered lead of the abyss. We will trade our frantic speech for the rhythmic clicking of the gills. The mermaid is not a relic of our past, but a preview of our future. She is the ancestor waiting at the bottom of the stairs to welcome us back into the cold. There is no fear left in the descent, only the weight of the truth. As the water fills the streets and the light of the sun is snuffed out by the stippled silt, we will finally understand. We were never meant to be creatures of the light. We were merely thoughts that the ocean had forgotten on the shore. And now the ocean is remembering. The choir is growing louder. The unhinged jaws are open. The abyss is not empty. It is full of us. And we are finally coming home. The silence of the trenches is the only peace that remains. The drowning is not an end, but a restoration. Welcome back to the salt. Welcome back to the dark. The tide has reached your door. Open it.